You ready?
I was born ready.
Heavenly shades of night are falling. It's twilight time.
Wanda and Vision, aren't we a five-pair?
This is our home now. I want us to fit in.
Oh, this is gonna be a gas!
Where did you two move from? How long have you been married? And why don't you have children yet?
Our story.
I think what my wife means to say is that we moved from...
Moved from where? Married when?
WandaVision. And this is the MCU finally having its TV show, not the film, but 6 episodes. Is that correct, Conor?
No, 9.
9?
Yeah.
Shit. Okay. So we got the first 2 episodes on the day of the release. And what a surprise. Wanda Maximoff and Vision are on the screen in black and white. And they are in a fucking sitcom. What the fuck is happening? Conor. Jesus Christ. What is this? They were meant to be shootings, flying, saving the earth, and fighting space and aliens. And those motherfuckers are just sitting in the room, black and white, and just like the audience laughs out loud. And what am I watching? What is this?
So what's a single gal like you doing rattling around this big house?
Well, I assure you, I'm married to a man, a human one.
Wanda.
What's it rain? And I ran. Wipe the sleep out of
We are an unusual couple.
Oh, I don't think that was ever in question.
We just don't know what to expect.
Explain.
So-
Explain.
Yeah, like this is what I think is working really well for this show so far in these 2 episodes, is that they completely have committed to the style. And that, you know, we've seen trailers and they've, you know, kind of let us peek a little bit into what's actually happening and kind of released tidbits to kind of lay down breadcrumbs so that we at least have an idea of what to expect. Like, I feel like they set the expectations just right for the show, where they're like, they've, you know, repeatedly said like, oh, it's not what you, it's, you know, it's not like anything that you've seen from the MCU before, right? Like, you know, like Kevin Feige himself, I think, said that. Like, it's not what anything like you've seen before. So I think that they set the expectations just right, that, you know, because I feel like if they hadn't known, if they were just like, oh, it's a mystery show called WandaVision, it's WandaVision, and then you go in and the first episode is 4:3 black and white and mono audio, you're like, what the fuck is going on? But they don't. We know to expect, like, oh, okay, from the trailers, each episode, or, you know, the show looks like it's going to be moving through different sitcoms throughout the year. So this one's starting sort of in the 50s, episode 2 being kind of in the 60s, sort of like leaning into Bewitched, with like the kind of opening done like Bewitched.
Yeah.
And we know that like they go right through to the 2000s with an episode based on The Office, which we haven't seen anything yet, but I'm really looking forward to that. Yeah, I don't know how much of it, like, it just, that's like one tiny bit that they've said, like, you know, like kind of in the, oh, we're openly
Mockumentary,
talking
right?
about,
Mockumentary
sort of,
style.
yeah.
Like This Country. Yeah.
And yeah, I think what the reason why for me with these 2 episodes this has worked really, really well has been that they have fully committed to the style of each generation and each show. And they've taken so many like kind of cues from those shows themselves, going as far as the first episode was filmed in front of a live audience. So which is really cool, right? Because then you get that kind of like laugh track in there as well, of the audience like laughing in real time to those sort of silly comedy moments that suit the era as well. Like the jokes that they're making very much suit the time that they're coming from, and I think both the actors are doing such a brilliant job of it. But why this works is there are these moments where the seams start to break a little bit, just hints here and there where things aren't adding up right, And I feel like they only work, and those sequences only carry any sort of impact because the rest of the show is so willing to go ahead and commit to the kind of wacky style that it's leaning into, right? Because if the show had have kind of half-assed done a sort of 50s sitcom, and then you got these sort of moments where the sort of walls were kind of cracking, you wouldn't really buy it as much, I feel like. But because it's so committed to it, in the first episode, for example, that's a spoiler if you don't want to listen, where he's choking at the table. The guy is choking at the table. The mum from that 70s show just keeps like kind of repeating the same phrase over and over again, and it's getting kind of closer to her face every time it does it. And Vision is just sort of stuck. He has no idea what's going on. And Wanda is kind of in a panic, and then she almost instructs Vision to save him. Like, she tells him, like, you know, help him. And it's such a small, like, it feels so uncomfortable. The whole sequence feels so uncomfortable compared to the rest of the show. Yeah. And it's just given that little bit of like, oh, not everything is really what it seems to be. Yeah. And I'm really looking forward to not only seeing how far they go with this through each of the other episodes, but also this is all of the stuff that they've told us so far. So there's like multiple levels. There's the stuff that they've told us. There's the stuff that they know people are going to pick apart based on like comics and things like that have existed in the past that the story's kind of being based on. And also then there's going to be another level, which is that you didn't really see this coming though, did you? Where we add in something completely wild that you never seen. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if we find out here about mutants for the first time in the MCU, because like you know, as we know, Disney acquired Fox, so we can now officially have mutants in this universe. We haven't had them yet in a real sense. Wanda is a mutant, but they just refer to her as an enhanced, where she was kind of worked on by Strucker, who gets a little bit of a shout out in the second episode if you picked up on that with the watch. Yeah. So, you know, are we going to get now for the first time, like, they go back and reveal sort of like origin plot points or whatever for Wanda, and we can now officially refer to them as mutants? You know, there's all sorts of avenues that they can go down that I think would completely catch people by surprise. So I'm looking forward to that. Like, you know, the multiple tiers of this, like, you know, where's the show going to go? Because it's fun to watch. You know, what are the parts that they're going to reveal that we were able to kind of guess or people were able to know about based on existing material? And then the third, like, kind of final layer is like, you know, gotcha, right? Didn't see this happening. Look who it is. We have Henry Cavill with a mustache playing Superman. We did it.
Yeah, and Wonder Woman comes to rescue.
Yeah, I was about to say, in this universe, Wonder Woman 84 is good.
So it's the same universe anyway. I mean, I have to say, I kind of knew what I'm going for when I started watching it. Didn't watch the whole trailer, just bits and bobs, and I know the characters more or less from the movies. But my girlfriend was like, until the moment we started watching it, she was like, she didn't know what is this, what the title means, who are those people, and she enjoyed it so much.
Nice. She
enjoyed it so much. And she was like, this looks really interesting. And I thought to myself, this is something very, very brave that Disney Plus is doing, Absolutely. Like MCU in general. Yeah. Just doing this sort of very quirky show that's, you know, this is not something extremely new in the world of cinema, because we had black and white episodes of the X-Files, for example. Mm-hmm. I think Buffy also did the very similar thing when they played with the setup and they showing the scenes of the universe. But this reminds me more of David Lynch's Twin Peaks than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if you were ever a fan of Twin Peaks, because for me, Twin Peaks was this TV show that kind of redefined the TV a little bit. In terms of how we watch it, how the discussion is happening around the one episode, what is actually gonna happen in the next episode, what is happening in the world that we seeing, and on the very first glimpse, Twin Peaks is just this kind of regular TV show, a little bit funny, you know, when the cop goes to, like, the CIA agent goes to town, he likes coffee and he likes pie, and he's looking for a serial killer, but there is such a dark undertone there, and it's kind of coming up more and more in each episodes, and this reminded me of that. This reminded me of this innocent, you know, setup that is actually leading to something else. And I think this is the biggest compliment I can give to this TV show, to remind me of one of my favorite things on the TV ever, which is Twin Peaks. Having this, like you said, you know, when you show the scenes of the show, and when you reveal there is something there. One thing that worries me, though, Connor, is that the setup or the payoff that's going to be delivered is going to be mainly for the geek fans and the geek boys and the geek girls, and probably most of the people who are not into MCU, they're not going to care about it that much. That's the only thing. I'm afraid it's too early to say anything.
Yeah.
However, you know, like all the winks to like Stark Industries and then to Hydra and you know, whatever we see there, this is kind of like, you have to sit deep in there. You have to sit deep, and you have to want to discover those secrets. And I think there is enough people out there who love this universe and are willing to actually sit for hours and talk about the meaning of this and that, and how this is going to tie up, and what's going to come out next. But there are also a lot of people who don't really care about it. And yeah, we'll see how this plays out.
Yeah.
Definitely one of the most interesting things to watch on TV right now.
And I think you're right too, because like I have to say that I think that's something that the MCU itself got right, is that like the movies themselves are interlinked and there are threads that connect one to the other, but you really don't need to know if you don't want to. You can go and watch some of these movies or many of these movies and just enjoy the movie itself. You get more from it if you know the other stuff. And I think that's what's going to be sort of similar here. I think like, I think that Kevin Feige, I don't know, did you see Ben Affleck's comments about Kevin Feige?
No.
Let's just say Ben Affleck wants to direct a Marvel movie, right? He called Kevin Feige the best producer that's ever lived on a podcast during the week, or last week, I think. He referred to that. He basically said that no one knows more than Kevin Feige what the audience really wants, and is able to give them that exactly. And that's what makes a great producer, right? It's knowing all of this stuff and knowing exactly what an audience member wants when they go to watch this as a collective, like an audience as a collective. Like, what do they want from this project? And I think he's went from strength to strength doing it as well. And this looks like, you know, so far, just even with this introduction of WandaVision, it looks like he's completely landed this on the TV side as well, right? Where he's been like, look, you know, there is absolutely a place here where we can go and make these crazy type shows, and they work on a platform like Disney Plus. This would not work if you had a 2-hour movie about Wanda and Vision set in multiple sort of time periods. I don't think it would work really well. Episodic, week to week, I think it works perfect. And and that's that understanding. He's like, no, like, people get it. And kind of going back to what I said with Star Wars earlier, it's like, the universe is now established and built, and you have people that care about it and they want to know more about it. And what really works is when you do other things within that universe. And the MCU has been doing that more and more and more over the past few years. And I think that the Disney Plus stuff will really lean into it, where we will see things like WandaVision, which will have this kind of like weird horror style to it, mystery kind of like X-Files sort of thing going on. Then we'll get like the sort of action thriller spy sort of stuff happening with Winter Soldier. Then we're going to get like a time cop type thing going on with Loki. Then when you flip over to the actual movies themselves, like you've got Sam Raimi doing the Doctor Strange movie, which sounds like it's going to be really dark and actually leaning heavily into a horror movie. It feels like Feige has hit that perfect note where it's like, hi, the real thing here is like the universe is established. People know the characters, they love them, we can introduce them, but what we want to do is we want to make great stories. And to tell great stories, we have to give creative people with good ideas and good platforms and interesting genre choices and mixing and matching genres, etc., etc. We need to give all of these people all of this stuff, hand it over to them, and then, Feige and his team, we will steer the ship. Right. And I think that that's what WandaVision is like. I'm so excited for this because this is the first Phase 4 stuff that we've had. Right. We haven't had any other, the last thing we had was Far From Home, which I seen when I first met you. It was, right? Like, that's how long ago it was, right? Like, that was the last time we had this Marvel stuff. So it's been such a wait to get to this point. So there was part of me that was like, okay, I really, really hope they land this. I really, really hope that this is good. And then the reviews started coming out, and I know the reviewers got to see like the first 3 episodes, and they were really strong in their opinions about it and how good it was. And I have to say that, like, I text you as a joke, but I feel like this is definitely a strong, like, powerful middle finger to the Martin Scorsese crowd of like, oh, it's just superhero stuff. It's like, yeah, you could take your ideas and shove them up your fucking ass. Cause like, we're fucking here. We're going to tell fun, fucking cool stories. All right. Cause that's at the end of the day, I keep saying it on all of these episodes, Rado. That's what people care about. They want to be told good stories. All right. And if a good story has, a 400-year-old Robert De Niro acting like a 20-year-old Robert De Niro, then so be it. Some people might find that interesting, but the rest of us, we're here for WandaVision. All right. That's what we're here for. Let's fucking go.
I hope you not gonna bring this quote you sent probably to many friends, not only to me. Without people like Martin Scorsese, without people who push the boundaries of cinema like David Lynch, you would not seen WandaVision or WandaVision today the way it is. That's just the reality. And whatever we discussed whatever Martin said, but you can't just say he is a silly old man. He is a little bit, but
yeah, I think he knows what he's doing. I think he knows exactly what he's doing as well. But that being said, and I think the same. I really love Christopher Nolan, and I can imagine Nolan thinks the same. Actually, I'm not so sure about that. Sometimes I think actually Nolan would really like to do a Marvel movie. I think it'd be like I could genuinely see it being something that he would be interested in doing, because if he was allowed the creative decisions, that he didn't have to tie in too much. He did the comic book movie. Let's yeah, of course. Why wouldn't he do the Marvel movie this way? I feel like people would be like, no, he wouldn't do a Marvel movie. And I think that Scorsese is that kind of the impression that you get from him when he calls it theme parks. They're like going to theme parks or whatever, and he's like, yeah, but none of us real directors would ever really want to do that. And then you've got like Taika Waititi over here being like, hi, just really,
not a real director.
Yeah, Did you watch Jojo Rabbit again?
We live in postmodern times, Connor.
We do.
And WandaVision is a postmodern TV show. Absolutely, it is. Yeah. Also, I just wanted to mention quickly, it's directed by Matt Shakman, who's directed all the episodes, and he used to be an actor in the sitcoms in the 80s. And he also started directing. He directed plenty of stuff, and he directed Game of Thrones and a few episodes of Game of Thrones,
The Boys, Succession, Game of Thrones, The Good Wife, Fargo.
Yeah.
6 Feet Under, One Tree Hill, Mad Men. Like, yeah, Everybody Hates Chris. It's Always Sunny, Psych. He's been around, done a lot of big projects.
Yeah. Great stuff. WandaVision as episodes 1 and 2 available right now on Disney Plus, and we look forward to Fridays when we can watch the next episode of that TV show.
Yes.
Well, I know the apron is a bit much, dear, but I am doing my best to blend in.
And now we want to just quickly touch on 2 last episodes. They are called Now in Color, episode 3, and episode 4, We Interrupt This Program.
We now have first-person intel from inside the Westview anomaly.
What are we looking at here? Is it an alternate reality, time travel?
It's a sitcom.
Starring 2 Avengers?
It's a working theory.
Interestingly, episode 1, we are landing in the sitcom era of the kind of 50s, 60s, right?
Oh, yeah, episode 1 were 50s, then we moved
50s, yeah.
60s.
Then moved to 60s in episode 2. Then suddenly, up towards the end of the episode 2, we see color appearing, and everything changes to color, and then we land in episode 3, now in color. So we are in the 70s, so this is a completely different TV show. We've changed the kind of setup of the house. House looks different, the clothes look different, there is a different opening of the episode, and in this episode, more and more stuff starts kind of bleeding through. The main kind of plot of this episode is that Wanda is suddenly pregnant.
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, and like what is happening, because we probably, as you probably know, Vision is not a real person. He doesn't, I mean, he probably has a tool to make things to her, but I don't think he can...
A tool to make things to her.
Yeah, but like I don't want to say dick, like I shouldn't be saying that. But he cannot plant the seed. He cannot plant the seed, if you know what I mean. But suddenly she turns out to be pregnant, and interestingly, pregnancy actually it's like in every probably TV show or film you've seen. Is happening instantly, so there is no like a long period of time, but suddenly 1 minute she's got a small belly, then she's got like a bigger belly, and now she's almost ready to pop. And one of the characters spends so much time with her, and something happens towards the end of the episode that she kind of spills something that makes Wanda go ballistic, and she kicks her out from the episode. And that was like big, I think it was like a big reveal for anyone who's watching this TV series. So end of episode 3 was a glimpse on the outside world. And I was thinking to myself, okay, that's interesting, because we kind of see very little of what actually is happening, what is reality, what isn't. But now we kind of see, okay, we've got some theories. We see another character there approaching Geraldine. And I was thinking to myself, so episode 4, right? So episode 4 is probably, it's going to be another, I don't know, 80s right now. It's time for the 80s sitcom. And I was quite surprised when it wasn't. But tell me, first of all, before we jump into We Interrupt This Program, tell me a little bit about Now in Color. What was your kind of thoughts on this episode?
I think what I love what this show is doing. Unsurprisingly, probably to many, right? But because it's set in a sitcom, right? It feels like it's all sort of laughs, and it's all sort of silly, and it's all like fantastical in many ways as well. Like it leans into that that sort of fantastical side of it, as you mentioned, like the pregnancy being sort of expedited and hurrying through. Because that's the way a lot of those sitcoms were. Everything was sort of happy-go-lucky. Sort of, they were designed to not be sad. There was not really meant to be much, like emotional weight to them. They were designed for audiences to be this sort of idyllic view of life, right? White picket fence type thing. And why that works here so well is because, as you mentioned, Vision is not real, nor is he actually able to give Wanda children. And we're starting to see more and more, into the idea that this is happening in Wanda's head. So with it, it actually brings with it such a sadness that she, in this world that she seems to have created inside her mind, and we've seen that when she glitches Vision out, and he starts to notice something weird is happening, and she glitches the sequence, right? And it loops back around. Or when the guy comes out of the manhole cover with the bee suit on, and she says no, and it like reverses it back the way. So we're getting these glimpses that Wanda is playing this out inside her mind, okay, or something to that effect anyway. So it brings with it such a sadness, such undertones of sadness that, as we know, she loved Vision so dearly as we've seen in Infinity War. And then because of, at the beginning of Infinity War, they had tried to run away, and she tried to fight to save his life, and then obviously she almost kills Thanos at the end of it in an attempt to save Vision. So she has this like real deep love for him, and it was set up through multiple movies. And then here she is inside her own mind, and she is playing out a sequence in which they are living happily ever after. She gets to have him in this like white picket fence suburban town. They're having children. It's amazing, and yet none of it's real. And that actually has such a sadness to it that those sitcoms, they kind of touched on themselves, but they never really went into it. They never actually addressed the sadness in them. That, like, they were, you could detect it and it was there, and you would be like, well, that's actually quite sad, but it never was really, the main reason behind any of the episodes. It wasn't ever a main talking point. So I think what they're doing is so clever in that way, is that, it's, when you think that little bit further into what's actually happening, it's really, really sad. And I could tell that this was the case because Anya, while she does enjoy the MCU quite a lot, she found that so sad when she was delivering the children, because she was like, it's not real. And it's not, and that's a horrible thing. And imagine, like, for us two sitting here, like, we don't really have that same experience, because we can't like bear children, but to imagine going through in your mind that emotional distress of fully believing that you had a family and you give birth to children for it to not be real. It's kind of really, really heavy stuff. And I don't think a show like this feels like it warrants it. I feel like it doesn't need to touch on something like that, and yet it is. And then, sort of aside from that, one of the other things that I really liked is this is actually the first time that we ever hear of Ultron since the Ultron. It's Age of Ultron. We haven't heard that name mentioned, or Pietrov. Pietrov, just long forgotten.
Pietrov
in the MCU. And to see her reaction to it, and at the same time getting Geraldine's reaction, where you can tell that she doesn't really understand what's happening either. Something is going wrong with her. She can't quite seem to put the thoughts together. It's almost like Alzheimer's or something, right? Or dementia, where it's like I can't quite, connect the dots here. Something is not adding up. I know what I said. I'm pretty sure I said it. I know I have a memory of it, but I don't know why. We don't get to see anything in this episode then as to how she gets kicked out or anything like that. Vision returns to the house after having a very interesting conversation outside the house with the two characters with the painted backdrop, and he's like sawing through the fence, or sawing through the walls. It's so good, and they're acting really strange, and Vision is detecting something's weird, something's not right here. And I think this show is just doing such a clever job, and I'll talk about it in episode 4 as to why I think it's doing an even better job than I probably would have even given credit for at this point. So I'm thoroughly looking forward to each week, and I think it's doing that thing that I've mentioned before on here that great shows or movies do when they're part of a franchise, which is where they make the older thing better. And this is already like the mention of Pietrov and the mention of Ultron already makes me intrigued. Like, do I want to go back and watch Age of Ultron? You know, do I want that little bit of a refresher to see if it tops up, and do they come back to that again? Or are we going to get more about Pietrov? We're going to get more about what happened, you know, obviously at the start of that movie where, you know, she is in, or both of them are in Strucker's place. That's where that movie opens. Are we going to see what happens pre-Ultron, and those pre-Ultron sequences make the Ultron movie a better movie? Who knows? But I can't wait to find out every week, and I think that's why the show is rocking it at the minute.
Yeah, I would probably agree with you if... So now I will tell you why I kind of lost interest, and I'm probably not gonna stop watching this, or I'm not entirely lost interest, but I kind of imagined what was happening in the MCU Disney studio when they were planning this series, and probably someone sat down and said, hey, we're just gonna do every episode in a different style, and do like a small thing that will reveal a little bit about the kind of true story, but not until maybe episode 8 or 9 we'll see really what happened. And someone said, I will stop you there, John. Our viewers will not persist with the show if it is too long, if it try to hide things too long. So maybe episode 4 or 5, let's do it 4. Let's just do like explanation episode. Let's tell everything we know to the people. Let's show them what they want to see. Show them what really happened after the kind of return of people. Let's show them who those characters are, what is really happening from the outside. Let's put them in our feet, in our position. Because, you know, when I look on IMDb, I can see that like first episode had 7.5, and then second 7.9, third episode 8, then episode 4 9 stars. So many, like the same amount of rating, like people already like jizzing from like seeing, you know, people coming back. Oh my god, this is almost like, you know, oh, this is not Infinity War, this is Endgame. Oh, just after Endgame, oh my god, this is what I wanted to see. And I feel like, oh yeah, all those Disney people just congratulating the, like, why don't you just keep on giving us what you were giving us for the previous weeks? Wait with the explanation, maybe just not that much straight away. And that's why I'm so disappointed. This TV show didn't take a stand just to be completely different. It just returned to, hey, this is, we are still MCU, you know, let's say this is still your favorite characters, you know, your superheroes, they are still here. Don't worry, it's all fine. And that's why I'm disappointed.
I don't think that that's an invalid argument, because there's certainly a part of me that was like, I want this show to go all the way into the weird, right? To do every episode like this. But then as I've been watching it, I've found myself being like, I want to kind of see what's happening on the other side, because we've established with like the little kind of ending sequences on each one where, you know, they sit down in front of the TV like that's the end of this week's episode, and then it pans back through the TV screen and we find that someone's watching it. So we know that there are people monitoring this situation, and we've seen the sword stuff already. So part of me has been like, okay, I think that it makes sense to peel back a layer. What particularly excites me about it then is that peeling back this far on the 4th episode, when we know we've got to go to 9 of them, really says to me that they have stuff planned for later in the show that people have not yet predicted.
Yeah.
You know, with such an MCU drought now for so long, people have been going wild and predicting as much stuff as they can and scraping over every single piece of information that they can find about the show, that makes you feel like people feel like they've got the plot completely sussed already. And where I feel like this episode number 4, even the title of it is great. Like, you know, it is a break from like your break from the regularly scheduled programming, where this really kind of turns to the audience and winks and says, you know, what do you see what we have planned, is the sequence where they are putting the clues on the board, and they're putting the characters down there, and they're writing stuff about the people who are in the show and who they are in real life in the MCU world. And then they also have things like written on the board, like the hexagons. Did you catch this?
Yeah.
Right. So like, what's with the hexagons?
Exactly,
Because they know that us as audience on this side
asking
are
the
going,
same questions. Yeah.
what's happening with what's the hexagons all about, right? So and so they're turning to the audience and saying, you think you figured it out, but we know where you're at this stage. We're completely stringing you along where we want you to be. It says to me that, you know, we go back to next week and we're in the 80s and we're doing the 90s. I know there's an episode that's based on the US office, so we're definitely going as far as the 2000s. So we have at least 3 more episodes based where it's going to be like fully just in this bubble that we have, which leaves us then, I guess, 2 more on the other side to explain what's happening in some fashion anyway. So I think they are moving this along at a really, really great pace, and this was just the right time to just say, okay, let's just show you what else is happening at the same time, instead of just leaving it all to the very end and then doing a big information dump. You know, like, it's like, though, if we've stringing you along, you're enjoying it, and you've got questions, and we know you've got questions, and we're gonna put the questions in front of you, because we wrote the show and we know what it is that we're doing. There is definitely an element of it where I'm super excited about so much of the actual MCU stuff. Like like I said, I loved getting in episode 3 about Pietrov and Ultron, getting to see the blip, like this episode opening in the hospital, was an incredible choice, you have to admit, because that always felt to me like that was always one of those hand-wavy movie moments where we don't ever need to really talk about it. Like, we seen it happening when, you know, Hulk snapped the gauntlet, and everyone came back, and we got a wee teaser bit, you know, in Far From Home, where we seen people kind of like, you know, come back, and that's it. Like, don't ask too many more questions. You don't really need to know. It doesn't really matter, you know, because like the more that you dig down into it, the more holes you find. You know, like, if someone was on an airplane whenever they got blipped away, do they just like appear again in midair even though the airplane's not there? And they just, you know, like, see, the further you dig down, the less sense it makes. So it felt like one of those things that they were never going to go back to. But to go back to it in such an intense way, like back into a hospital, we're getting a character who, if you are following the show and if you've been following the pre-announced stuff or following the MCU enough, you know who she is. And if not, you're not quite sure, and then you get introduced to the fact that she was in Captain Marvel as a child, and now she's grown up, and that her mother set up Sword, which we haven't really seen except for at the very end of Captain Marvel, where he had Fury on the spaceship, right? And it was very much at that point too, because we haven't seen anything since then. So it was like, how's he on a spaceship? Why is he on a spaceship? What is the spaceship? And yet this episode just very passively mentions the fact that there's like off-planet missions that happen. You know, like Sword deals with like intergalactic threats. There is stuff there. We haven't really seen it thus far, but it's there. And it's tying up that little drop of information where we had Samuel L. Jackson on the on that sort of ship or that headquarters or whatever at the end of Captain Marvel. Right down to like little tiny things like the way Jimmy Woo introduces himself with the magic card after being like obsessed with Ant-Man's magic. And Ant-Man, if you remember, Ant-Man does a magic trick and he's like completely perplexed by it. And it's just like that's fan service. That's a tiny little like, hey, do you remember this, right? But the rest of it is them like continuing to just build this universe, just put little pieces here and there, and they don't have to draw a lot of attention. Some of them can be throwaway lines, like Monica Rambeau in Dick Geraldine in the comics has superpowers, right? So there's a super subtle question is, if you remember in the hospital when she runs into the guy and who is like blipping back into place and she bumps into him. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Start. It's like he's quite badly injured, Like for what seemed like just like a small bump. Like it didn't seem that bad, but he seemed like he took it really hard, right? And so does she have powers already? Like have they happened to her and we just don't know it as an audience member? And yet they're not being like, look at the moment here where she has powers, right? Or, you know, it's just like maybe a little nod to it, you know, that it was there. Because I remember I didn't pick that up at the start, but I remember thinking when she got shot through the walls by Wanda, because we go back to the episode 3 sequence and we see Wanda kind of like ejecting her from her reality, and we're getting that great sequence of her kind of twisting and turning and becoming slightly more paranoid and even potentially evil. But I remember asking, like, how? Actually, Enya asked me, but I remember thinking the same thing. I was like, you know, how did she survive that? My first thought was, oh, the reality isn't real. It's not. She wasn't actually smashed through a wall or anything, right? It's all make believe. But then I thought, well, what actually, if it is? But she just has powers, you know. So, and that's why it didn't. That's why she was able to go flying all that way through the sort of like force field, land on that field, and not be dead and have all of her bones broken. We don't know, but we do know that in the comics she has powers. So maybe they are just like, you know, again, subtly just getting to it without having to, you know, do a big, like, we don't need a Monica Rambeau movie, you know. We can just subtly introduce it over the course of a few episodes, just bit by bit by bit, and then you get to piece it all together on your own as an audience member. And I think that's what's super fun here. And I think so far WandaVision has been the perfect transition from the movies to the TV. That's exactly what people have wanted. Whenever we got Daredevil and Punisher and all that other garbage years ago, this is what people wanted. They wanted, like, oh, it's Marvel stuff and it's TV episodes. They just never were that good. So I think WandaVision has really, really landed on both feet with that kind of transition, and I'm so hopeful that they can keep it up through Falcon, Winter Soldier, and Loki later in the year.
So, did you actually watch Daredevil, or you just saying it was not?
No, I watched it. Yeah.
I don't agree. I think it was a more classical kind of approach to storytelling, but still, I think it's incredibly good TV show.
Calling Daredevil garbage is probably a bit unfair. Like Iron Fist was garbage. Luke Cage crap. Didn't like this Jessica Jones. Daredevil's biggest problem. Jessica. Daredevil's biggest problem, as with most of these shows actually, was that they were too long. They've had so many filler episodes.
Yeah.
Like I felt Daredevil could have been like a 3, maybe 4 episode season, and it would have been absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
But they just kept going on.
Yeah,
like,
I lost interest in, I think, series 2 or 3. But
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you know, I like listening to you because you got great points in there, and you tell it from the perspective of a fan, or like a real fan.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, you know, I got a little bit excited when I saw, you know, whatever's happening after the blip. I think this sequence is great. I just feel like this episode could have been, like, in general, this could have been handled a little bit better in terms of don't give us everything. And I get your point about, okay, we're giving a big reveal halfway through the series, but it's not like a big reveal. This is something we already know and we kind of guessed, so we're just reiterating, and it's doing a fan service on so many levels. It just doesn't feel right, you know, like it's just getting those characters from Thor, Dark World, from Ant-Man, from Captain Marvel. You can say, oh, it's tidying up the MCU, but it's also fan servicing people, and just keeps like just getting on my nerves a little bit, because like I think this is the episode when people who were watching it from the outside, like, oh, what is the show? Who is this about? And they got like kind of intrigued with first 3 episodes, and now they see this that requires so much knowledge. They'll be like, nah, not watching this anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is the fan service episodes. I will be keep on pressing with this show. I think I invested some time with it, and I'm kind of curious how this is gonna play out as well. And it's a good quality show. Don't get me wrong. don't like. I'm not dissing anything or anything about this. It's got still so much things unrevealed that I'm gonna stay for them. But I think like this episode was actually a downer for me, and I'm looking forward to next 5 episodes.
Fair enough.
This is WandaVision or Scarlet Witch and Vision, however you want to call it, on Disney Plus, and it's available weekly.
Is this really happening?
Yes, my love.
I was gonna say we're on full spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen it and maybe wants to keep it in for episodes 5 and 6, right?
Episodes 5 and 6 on a very special episode aired 5th of February, and all new Halloween Spooktacular aired on 12th of February.
We now have first-person intel from inside the Westview anomaly.
What are we looking at here? Is it an alternate reality, time travel?
It's a sitcom.
Starring 2 Avengers?
It's a working theory.
Life moves fast out in the suburbs.
I think something's wrong here.
Should we just take it from the top?
Wanda!
I don't know how any of this started.
What is outside of Westview?
Yeah, I'm not sure what that's about. It's probably just a case of the Mondays. Am I right?
So I think instead of talking about the plot, I'll leave you to it if you want to do it. Can I just say a couple of things?
Yeah, like I don't think we need to go through this plot by plot. I think when the season ends, we can do like a recap of maybe some of our like favorite moments from it and like the big standout moments. But I do think that like weekly ongoing, it is providing a lot of interesting discussion, and I know you feel about it a certain way and I feel about it a certain way, and I know that your way of thinking about it is wrong and incorrect and mine is correct and true, and so yeah, by all means, you've got the floor.
I will start, and I'll try to be brief. Okay, so this TV show started really strong for me, and I love the suspense and I love the kind of unknown, and this was there until episode 3. Then the episode 4 dropped in, which kind of explained us everything. And I thought to myself, episode 5 and 6 will be this will either go back to the kind of episodic form, or they will put it like kind of intertwine those two stories, because I think the cat is out of the bag, right? Because they already showed us one side, what's happening inside the bubble, the hexagon or whatever, and they show us what's happening outside the hexagon. So we are right now not only watching the TV show, but we are watching the TV show with the characters who are like outside there, and we are together trying to figure out what the hell is happening. So this, from this very intriguing, mysterious TV show, suddenly turned out to be another Marvel extravaganza. And by the end of the episode 5, we are in the full fucking swing of, we need you in the next episode because there is something happening and there is a new character that appears, and you are just probably, because you're a fan, you are pissing your pants. And at this point I said to myself, okay, so not only that I have to have watched all the fucking Marvel movies to see who that character is. I probably, just from the context of that, I know this is Pietro that's appearing, spoiler, but they recast him. Okay, so let's go deeper in that. Why did they recast him? What actually is happening? So wait, Disney purchased the whole fucking Fox catalog, and they have right now a mutant. Does that mean? And at this point, I'm just sitting there, this is what I expected. This is gonna be one of those shows that you have to kind of read through every fucking... Sorry, I'm swearing quite a lot.
Oh, I was thinking we should put up like a warning at the start of this episode. I have swore every other word probably.
Yeah. So you have to now read the theories, be aware of what's going on inside the Disneyverse, but also what's happening outside. And it's just like, I just want to watch a good and interesting TV show that's going to keep me gripping. Okay. And now my question. There is much more stuff happening around this TV show than actually interesting stuff going on in the TV show, because I think the episodes right now become dull, become really boring. They are not funny. The writing is lazy. The jokes don't land. The kind of thing that we were meant to like that much, which was the homage to the sitcoms, has disappeared. I mean, I didn't know what the hell the episode 5 is trying to do. Episode 6 is trying to be Malcolm in the Middle or something like that. Okay, fine. The opening credits are great, but apart from that, I'm like, none of the jokes are funny. None of the characters interesting. Even worse, what's happening outside the bubble is just crap I've not seen since probably watching Jessica Jones on Netflix. The acting is bad. The acting is bad. The jokes are just flat. The stuff is getting ridiculous. It's like, hey, let's kick some asses. Let's the three of the characters in the episode 6 being taken by the guards, and they are being overwhelmed by people who have no fucking clue how to fight. And then the girl that was in Thor, she takes the computer and hacks into the mainframe, whatever. I'm like, this is like some kids crap, and I was expecting a better quality show. So if it was only the stuff that's happening on the outside and good quality show being delivered, I would want it. But I think for me this doesn't work anymore, because the quality of the episodes has gone to the gutter. And the stuff that's happening inside requires so much work to know outside that I'm just tired. And I texted this to you. I'm tired of this show, and it doesn't give me any joy. And I'm going to watch it till the end. I invested enough money. Yes, but this is a fucking soap opera. This is a soap opera. And I don't know. I used to watch not Dallas, the one of the others, like soap operas, because I was invested. Like, I hated it. I was like, who's gonna kill someone? Who's gonna be resurrected? This is the same stuff, and I just don't feel like this TV show deserves that high ratings. That's my rant over.
That was quite the rant as well. And like I said at the start, all wrong. But again, you're entitled to it. You're entitled to it. And I think
thanks, Kyler.
I think some of the stuff that you're talking about, like, I think there is a seed of something there that I do agree with, in that there is some sense of maybe wouldn't it be nice if there was something from Marvel at this point that wasn't part of the big universe and leading to something else in the universe, But I also think that as a fan of that, that's one of its strongest features. I'm here to watch this movie or this show and this series because I'm invested in the bigger universe. The best way that I can describe the MCU at this point is that it is greater than the sum of its parts. In that, like, individually, you can pick apart every single movie for some sort of flaw. You can pick apart parts of WandaVision, and I'm sure you'll be able to do the same with Falcon and Winter Soldier, etc., etc. But collectively, when you combine them all together, you're left with this thing that is much, much stronger than anything else that there is similar. In fact, there's nothing really similar at all. And that's so interesting that they have managed to build this living, breathing universe through the movies, and now they've managed to transition it into TV, and they've really, in my opinion, they've hit the ground running with it. They have not really stumbled too much, and I don't think that you're necessarily wrong in saying that, like, some of the writing and stuff is bad. I do think that a lot of that is, in this case, I would write off to it, the show being very much on the nose, like the episode 5 that you mentioned is I think it's I think it's is it Growing Pains or Family Ties, one of the two that it's based on, which was Elizabeth Olsen's sisters, Mary Kate and Ashley, were two young twins right? And as we get introduced to two young twins in the series, like they are so far down the rabbit hole of like being meta and inside jokes, not just for the inside of the MCU, which there are plenty of through Jimmy Woo in particular, but inside jokes about the series, about the time periods that they were in, about the MCU, about the actors involved with it. You know, we've seen Kat Dennings getting pulled into the Hex at the end of the last episode, and I fully expect her to work in a diner as, you know, like two broke girls. I fully expect it, because they're saying like, no, the whole point in this show is that it is like, it's this weird warped reality, and everything about it, it's weaving in and out of our own reality, it's weaving in and out of the movie reality, it's weaving in and out of potentially other movie realities. Like, it's so free to do that, because, you know, they have spent all of this time telling us about these characters and what we believe that can happen in this universe. We know the extent of Wanda's powers. Enya and I went back and watched Age of Ultron, who I feel might make a return in this. I just have a funny feeling about it after watching that movie, that we might get some form of Ultron again. But we see that, you see in that movie where she plays the trick on Tony, which inevitably leads to him in Civil War, which then gets brought back in Endgame about him being like possessed by this idea that there's something coming. But, you know, we see that her capabilities of making people fully believe something. We didn't really see that again after that. That's really the only time we get any sort of peek into it. Now it's back in full force, and it's happening in full force. And that's why we're seeing Age of Ultron stuff pop up here, is because they're tying it right back until that point in time. You know, they're looping this, they're kind of closing this loop. But I think that you might be surprised then as well with some of the stuff that they're doing around, you know, as you mentioned, them purchasing Fox and mutants and stuff like that. They're definitely laying the groundwork, but I don't think that the stuff that's happened so far is what you think it is. And I really like this about the show as well, is that it despite the fact that all we know and all we've seen theorized online, if you're really into it and you're reading stuff, you know, and trying to string things together, we still don't actually know where these next 3 episodes are going to lead us. We don't. And the show has been so good so far at actually saying, you thought it was going to be this, but it hasn't been this. Even if you went right back to episode 1 or episode 2 and you're like, you know, what you think is kind of happening, a lot of that has not come to play at all. It's been a completely different direction. And I said when I was in sort of December time, I might have said it on a show, I said, I want this to be like Lost for me. I want to be going on to like Reddit afterwards and like looking up like clues that they maybe dropped in there. And I'm getting that exactly how I wanted it. Now it's not to say that the show was without fault, but it is giving me what I wanted. And I understand your point of view of saying like, I maybe would have preferred each episode be the kind of weird cookie. It's just in the TV show and there's nothing happening outside of it, you know, as opposed to this kind of like moving back and forth that we're doing now. But I do think that, I always say, like, I always look at Enya as kind of like the more layman view of what is happening in the MCU, because she really enjoys watching it and we love watching it together, but I'm really, really invested in it. And for her, like the first 2 episodes, she was like, I don't really like it. It's kind of weird. And then as it's progressed, she's like, I absolutely think this is fantastic. I've went the opposite direction. And it's the opposite to you, right? And again, that's because I think that you have an understanding of a lot of what you want from the show and expectations of it, because you have, you know, either like through osmosis from me, you've absorbed more about the MCU than you did have 12 months ago or 18 months ago. But you have this like, I understand these little bits and pieces. And you had no idea when Pietrov showed up that was going to be kind of what they were hinting at. Maybe there's a crossover between she had no idea about Disney and Fox, you know, maybe a passing from me talking about it before or hearing about the news, but no idea that it was happening, and it didn't matter it didn't matter. But the show was just getting more interesting as time went on, because they were like bending at the rules and they're throwing little bits here and there, and you can see the cracks literally starting to show across this world that Wanda has built herself in. And my final point, and what I think is so good about this show, and the Mandalorian did this really well too, is that it has brought back something that has not been around, in my opinion, in a long time, which is the weekly viewing. And it becomes like you dedicate that Friday evening time to sit down in front of the TV, and everybody's doing the same thing at some point during the weekend, which is pretty cool. Like it's no longer fixed. You got to be there at 7 o'clock or you're missing it. It's like, no, somewhere over that weekend, most people on a Friday night, we're sitting down and we're watching this show together collectively as a group, and we're talking about it, and we're sharing ideas, and we're discussing it, and we're getting excited, or getting disappointed, whatever it happens to be. I think Disney have done such a brilliant job here of, and again, it's almost paying homage to the shows that it's actually, kind of parroting in a way, the shows that people used to sit around their TVs and watch, and it's doing it so well, and it has everybody coming together at some point over the week and saying, this is our family time, we're sitting here to watch this. And I think that is really, really, really cool. Mandalorian did it, and I think that this is actually doing it even better, because maybe the Mandalorian was the right sort of setup for that, where people got into the rhythm of it again, and now rolling right into this. And like I said at the start of the episode, we moved from this maybe a week gap to Falcon and Winter Soldier, and I find myself every week like counting down the days to Friday. I'm like, I can't wait to sit down on Friday night and watch this show and see what happens this week, because I don't know. I have ideas, I've read stuff, but I don't really know, and I'm so excited to see where they go with it, because they keep just tweaking enough to throw me off guard here and there.
I agree, and I mean, this is a great thing. The whole experience of watching something and waiting for it, like Lost used to be, and TV shows back in the days before they were dropped. And I agree, this is incredible. But for me, again, I would say this: it is a little bit like, you're waiting for this. Oh, what's gonna happen? And what you get is like a lot of stuff you can talk about, but the quality of that isn't like there. And I think, if we could spend as much time, not only us but other podcasts, the articles and whatever, talking about great stuff on the TV that's kind of overlooked because WandaVision is this big universe. I'm sitting today and watching another episode of Snowpiercer, and I know you gave up on it, but I love the universe of that, and I just want to kind of sit down and chat with someone. So if someone wants to do a podcast with me about Snowpiercer and the world, please get in touch, because I'm more than happy to. Last week I stumbled across one episode of Mr. Robot that floored me, and the quality of that, it was just like, what the fuck? We are sitting here and talking about bigger picture, because by the end of the day we're talking about not only about the episode but all the connotation. But just for a moment, let's kind of step back, look at the quality of that. It's not that great, is it? There are great shows that deserve also other stuff. Maybe, I mean, I just wanted to show like a different perspective, because I knew you're going to love it. And for the right reasons, I respect that, I get there, I sit down and I wait for the episodes, because I kind of want to be annoyed. I kind of want to be surprised as well. And I want to talk to you about it. And it's great. But there is so much other great stuff. And at some point in life, we're going to be sitting here and doing the show about Disney fucking TV shows only. And this is not good. This is not good.
It's not. I'm joking. I can't. I say I can't wait. They're making amazing stuff. I think they're making amazing stuff. But, this doesn't take away from me being like, I can't wait to see what HBO do. I can't wait to see what Apple TV Plus put out next that is going to catch us off guard. When I think back to something like The Outsider, which had no idea, nobody knows it's coming, normal people, for yourself, or I May Destroy You, and it's like, these are not things that have this sort of like, there's momentum coming into WandaVision, though half the world knows WandaVision, and that is what it is. But it doesn't mean that I don't mean that if we review stuff at the end of the year and we do our list that WandaVision is going to be anywhere near the top or in the top 5. you know, it may not be, and there may be a lot better stuff that comes from other places that wasn't Disney or Marvel at that time. But I just think that what it's delivering at the moment, there is no other show like it. There is really not, and I've never seen a TV show quite like what WandaVision is doing right now.
I mean, it is doing with people what Twin Peaks used to do with people, what Lost did with people at some point. The momentum is much bigger because the world is suddenly much smaller and everyone's watching the same thing. And I think that's great. You know, if we can collectively watch stuff and be excited about it, I can't want more, you know.
Are you crying?
But I'm invested.
Right, time for the favorite time of the show when we spoil every second of WandaVision.
Right, spoilers.
That's series available on Disney Plus, and we have this episode 7 and 8 to discuss before the grand finale. And I think this is right place to kind of take it. You know, we will discuss the finale in the next episode. We might just even record a special episode. I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen? And kind of look at the whole series from that perspective. But we're getting to the end. So last two episodes, episode 7 was breaking the fourth wall, and then episode 8 was previously on. So we learned on the episode 7 that in the previous episode, actually, what happened, the hive or the boundaries of the town have expanded. Some people were kind of dragged in, and then we turned into a different sitcom, and this was a kind of a mixture of The Office. Even the music was kind of like a direct ripoff of the Office.
Yep.
And they were talking directly to the camera, so the characters are talking actually directly to the camera. So we are in the ratio of the screen actually have changed as well. That the quality is much better in terms of when we compare it to like previous episodes, and so we have Vision working with Jane, right?
Darcy.
What's the character's name?
Darcy.
Darcy.
Yeah, Jean is her friend from Thor.
The other
Thor
thing. Yeah. So we have Vision working with Darcy to get to the town center. It's really hard for them for some reason to get back home, and we have
like a little bit of a nod to Thingy, didn't it?
Which one?
Truman Show. Like it felt to me like a nod to the Truman Show, even though it was kind of like out of its time era. Like things keep happening that prevent them from getting there. That was pretty funny, but yeah.
And Wanda is on her own, trying to kind of relax. She had a hard day earlier in the previous episode, and even she gives her kids to Agnes so she can stay on her own. Was that a good decision? Well, we'll find out soon that maybe not necessarily. And what did you like? Kind of my reaction, first of all, was like, again, coming from last week's few discussions, is I don't find it funny. And the whole breaking the fourth wall, which is the trope we've seen in the Office. Especially, this is almost taken from the Office, because even at some point we've got a kind of a glimpse that there is someone there. Someone actually answers the question, and Wanda is super surprised that someone actually says something to her, like in real life. But I mean, I don't know. I want to hear your opinion, because I kind of was like, okay, let's just push this forward. Let's just kind of learn something. I think the more interesting stuff was going on outside the perimeters of the town, but I want to hear what you thought about this episode.
Yeah, because we also have Photon or Spectrum kind of get
whatever her
fully
name
formed into this. Yeah, we don't know yet for sure, but yes, we kind of get the creation of a new Marvel character to some extent happen in this episode as well. Again, yeah, like I thought this did another fantastic job at being so in on its own jokes and so in on what it's trying to do. Like, it's fully committed to it, in a way that the first episode did. And you know, I remember saying that back in the first episode. It's like, this show has fully committed to what it is that their vision of it is, and they are still like, they haven't really peeled away from it. You know, I know you kind of wanted to just them to go 100% into just doing those shows, more so anyway. But I was always of the opinion that I don't think generally audiences would have wanted to spend all this time without giving us what is actually happening.
I do like subtlety, and I don't like people explaining the plot all the time. And this is what's happening in every single episode. People just stand in front of each other and just explain things to each other that we actually see. So that's my problem. That's not the problem. How that the things are revealed is the problem. How they are revealed, and there is no subtlety. It's not really subtle in terms of doing that.
I think that this one, by the fact that they're even calling it like breaking the fourth wall, like the title in and of itself is almost like is almost breaking the fourth wall. You know, that makes sense. And I think that the two sort of standout things in this episode to me are Elizabeth Olsen's performance and Paul Bettany's performance as Vision. They have that fantastic sequence where he's talking to the camera, and then he kind of realizes that he's talking. He's like, why am I being interviewed? And he gets up and takes the microphone off and like knocks the boom mic out of the way, and it's like, you know, and flies off then. And it's like this, you know, it's just, it's funny because to me it's so in and of itself. It's like, you know, well, you know, why would Vision be getting interviewed? You know, it doesn't make any sense. Like, who is doing the interviewing and why would he be being interviewed? It doesn't actually make sense. You know, kind of like, in a way, Modern Family was like that. Because The Office, it sort of made sense because it was this mockumentary style where they are following these people around in this office in Scranton or wherever, whatever version of it you want to watch. But in Modern Family, it never really made a lot of sense because who was actually interviewing them? And it felt like that part to me, again, felt like this joke inside of a joke inside of a joke where they're like, we're making it and it's a little bit about Modern Family, but why were the people in Modern Family being interviewed? And why did they never stop to say, why am I being interviewed? And they get Vision to do that sequence. Like, why am I doing this? It doesn't make any sense. Like, something is not adding up here. And that kind of all gets revealed in the next episode. But I think Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany have done incredible jobs throughout this. And there are sequences, sure, and you know, some of the dialogue between Vision and Darcy where she sort of has to sort of explain something in there for viewers who maybe are not regular MCU watchers. So she kind of has to explain, oh, like, yeah, you died after Thanos, remember? It's sort of like saying, like, yeah, this is a little bit of exposition for anybody that might not have watched this movie or followed this all that recently, or maybe seen it once but don't really remember anything. And it's like, yeah, you kind of died, and you know, just as a little reminder. And you know, I feel like if they were going all the way and saying that we don't really, you have to have seen other stuff for this to watch, that's the sort of dialogue where we would have less of throughout it. But I certainly enjoy this episode right up then until the reveal, sort of 2/3 from it, and then I thought, they're just having so much fun with this, and it's really, really, really working for me. I do think that episode out of the series was probably the one that I vibed with the least, if I'm being honest. I don't really know what it was. There was just something off about how it felt, or its pacing, or something that just felt a little strange, and I didn't quite get. And then what's happening outside the hex as well, I felt sort of they had built up this sequence of there's someone coming in and they're gonna help us, and then it was just like, huh? I think there's gonna be more to that. I think that was deliberate, but it felt like a little bit of a letdown at that time when what's happening with Jimmy Woo and stuff, like outside the hex. I was like, oh, that's not what I was hoping for.
Yeah, we had also like this typical. This was typical kind of Marvel stuff when the character does things with her hands and throwing some sort of power on the other character. This other character lands on the air, on the ground, and her eyes light up, and they're like, "Whoa, cool stuff! I've been waiting for this," and you've been probably waiting for this as well, like just to see another kind of, because we see an origin story of a character in this, kind of not being, spoon-fed, or not making the whole kind of film about it, but just few sequences, few scenes here and there, and Monica Rambeau is turning to Photon or whatever that character is going to be.
Yeah, we don't know. Yeah, and I think again, I think I've said it before, what the show is doing so well is we're now, we're recording this the night before the series finale, and we really don't actually know how it's going to end. We're not like you can follow the rumors, you can follow the stuff. We're still not really sure. Like, it's not, and it could be a complete disappointment. It could be a success. It could be all set up for the next thing. But genuinely, I think for me, it has succeeded in being that it is done that we just don't know. And that's what I wanted from this show. I wanted that sort of like mystery to unfold. I didn't want to know the plot of this show kind of all figured out within episode 2, and people were like, yeah, it's just now a matter of points coming together and things happening, and we figured it out. You can go and read like subreddits for this stuff, and last week's episode are still furious debates about what happened in that episode versus what it's going to lead to as well. And for me, that's why I'm enjoying it so much. It's so fun to sit down and watch this every week, and then to have that almost like a virtual water cooler moment. I have a few friends that are like Friday mornings, they're like, have you watched it yet? Or Friday evening, or have you watched it yet? And we're like, I think this happened, I think that's happening. And I think the shows are just missing that so much at the moment. And WandaVision for me is just nail on the head.
Yeah. The next episode, I'm pretty sure you enjoyed quite a lot. This is the episode 8 when we finally, there was a lot of speculations online, people talking about who is Agatha, the neighbor, right? And we kind of learned like who she is really. She reveals herself in like a very witty opening sequence when she shows how she actually acted behind the scenes, and that she killed Sparky. And that was a bit...
Yeah, she gets her own theme music.
Yeah,
it was and Agatha all along.
Yeah, and it's kind of dark, and I have to say I enjoyed this episode more for a few reasons. One is it is not trying to be this, because I said that before, I was very disappointed with the last few attempts to be a TV show, and they didn't work for me. And this one at least is not trying to be, but it's using a different formula completely. It's like this almost Christmas Carol theme, when you have someone taking you somewhere to see you in some other place, and you can see Elizabeth Olsen's performance here is actually incredible. She is fantastic. She is fantastic in this episode. This episode previously on kind of reveals a lot of stuff that was happening. Pretty much, I'm not sure if everything was revealed yet, but we've seen a lot of it, like how the actual town was conceived, and that's a big kind of like emotional moment. And what are the characters that they live in the town, and kind of where we take them from, their roles, what they do. But we see also the history of Wanda, and as she was a child, and we kind of start making sense of like why the adverts, especially like the first advert, you remember the one with the Stark and the kind of blinking lights, and that's the direct reference to the bomb that landed in the salon when the family was watching a TV show. Yeah, and we know why those TV shows actually are being used. And big kind of big reveal episode with great acting. And I have to say I enjoyed that one. I think this is the first one I enjoyed for a while, and just because it kind of, I like revealing stuff, but using a key to do it, and that key was this kind of Christmas Carol vehicle when you kind of go behind the door, and you see somewhere. And you know, we were misled in a couple of episodes earlier when we kind of were shown the footage when Wanda went to get Vision, you know, but really she didn't. And what happens towards the very final of that episode is also very interesting, and that leaves us to see what the hell is going to happen in the last episode. I would not be surprised if the last episode is about an hour long, because there is a lot of stuff to unveil, and some cool stuff to kind of show to people, you know, like people flying in the air and hands being kind of like gestures and stuff like that, you know. That's the things you like. What's your opinion on this one?
I think this one
Conor hated it.
Like a fantastic episode. I watched this twice in one day, actually, because I couldn't risk spoilers, so I watched it on my own in the morning, and then later on Anya had some time to watch it, so we watched it together on the Friday evening. And I had no problems watching it a second time at all. I was more than happy to sit down and watch it twice. And I think the opening sequence, like in Salem, which there's a small nod back to that in an earlier episode as well, where and I think it's in the first episode where Agnes, or as we now know her as Agatha Harkness, the witch, she mentions a date about her anniversary to her husband. And in real life, the date that she mentions is the date that begins on like the Salem witch trials. So it does. So like they are, like there has been these like breadcrumbs throughout the series.
Someone's reading subreddits,
you know. And I am, because I wanted to do all of this as part of it. I wanted this show, is what I'm saying. I wanted this show to be like the final episode, and we still don't know. And I would love it if we get the next episode and we still don't even really know. And I don't mean I really want a second series of this. I don't mean I even care if it's followed up in another movie. Like sometimes ending with that, maybe you didn't need to know, is really good, and it's really fun and could work really, really well. Like maybe it's just left unsaid and picked up in 10 years time in another movie. Who knows? But I think that, this one did a fantastic job, as you said. Like, it introduces us not just to who Agatha actually is, but it very quickly introduces us to her level of power as we see her getting rid of all the other witches. And it also introduces us to the idea of witches really well in the MCU, and how that might have to play into other movies and franchises and stuff going forward. Because, you know, there's been a few references here and there. Tony Stark referred to Wanda as a little witch in Age of Ultron, which I watched recently. I know in Endgame, Thor's mother says, "I was raised by witches." It was in Far From Home. One of the teachers says, "As a man of science, I think it's witches." You know, and like there's been like these little references throughout that, like these things exist here. We just maybe haven't seen them at all. And then we get that really cool reveal at the end of her in her like final costume, and that's super cool. It's a cool looking costume, and she has the twins and so on and so forth. But I also agree with how they peeled back all of these stories of Wanda in that sort of Christmas Carol way, or Previously On is a great title here, and it's almost like a clip show. It's like, you know, when a season like runs out of episodes or whatever, they need a filler episode, and they do like a rerun of funny clips or whatever. You see it in The Simpsons and Scrubs and sitcoms all the time. How I Met Your Mother is a big one that does stuff like that, where they just do like a highlight reel for the season to fill an episode. And this kind of felt like that, but the twist on it here was it was stuff we'd never seen before, and that was kind of cool as well. I think ultimately what this show is doing the best, and why it's been so successful, and it's what I really, really want from all of the Marvel movies and all of the MCU properties that we're getting, is that they continue to tell really cool stories that at their core are something else, and they're just wrapped in this universe that we've come to know and love, and characters that we know and love. And this show is a show about love and grief. And it is doing that at such an excellent level on every episode. And that sort of, you know, it starts off with it's all love, and she's so loved up, and she has this perfect life, and then the seams start to show and the cracks start to show that we as an audience member know that it's not all perfect. We know what's happened, Vision. We're not really sure why. And then as time moves on and each episode passes, we get more and more of that grief, and it really culminated in this episode with that two sort of moments where, you know, one is where as Vision keeps having some of the best lines in the MCU, or in the Avengers complex, where he says, what is grief but if not love persevering?
Yeah.
An incredible piece of dialogue, and it's a piece that it's like, and the delivery is just perfect. And Enya is very much like, I just love Vision so much because he's so powerful compared to so many others in the MCU, but yet everything about him is entirely gentle and like thoughtful compared to like Thor, where he's just like a blunt instrument, you know. And I think that there's that sequence there, and it's just like, you can see the enlightenment on her face for a second, and it's like, oh, that's the sort of beginning of their relationship in a way. And in that one line, it explains so much as to why in the other movies where it skipped over them becoming a couple and so on and so forth, that it kind of almost like it just defines it in that one little sequence of them sitting watching Malcolm in the Middle. And then you move on to the sort of latter half of it, where she has this incredible anger at seeing his body, which was horrific. If you put yourself in that situation, again, like, just truly horrific watching him being like pried apart. And then we get to the sequence of her at the property, and it's the culmination of all of this grief, who, as we've learned through the episode, she's lost her parents, she's lost her brother, she's lost Vision, all in a very short period of time, for the most part, and then essentially, in a way, kind of died and then came back with Thanos, and, you know, and is in this now very different world, and has never really been shown any sort of family outside of these people who've all been constantly ripped away from her. And that grief culminates with this incredible show of power, and again, another unbelievable performance of her on that like plot of land, as this all kind of sets in with Vision's letter, or his, you know, the blueprints for the house that eventually becomes the house that she's been living in, you know, that says to grow old in. And it's just like, oh my God, like, you really do get the sense of everything Wanda has been trailed through in these episodes,
yeah.
in you know, as a character. And that's why I love what they've done here, because you would never get a movie that did this. You would not get a Wanda movie that, like, Disney would not approve Marvel to make a movie that was like slow and about her relationship and about her grief and everything. It would need to have more fight scenes and more cool stuff happening, because it's a big blockbuster movie and they need to spend a lot of money on it and blah 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 blah. This here is like, no, like, we've got time on our hands now. We've got the ability to let these characters breathe, that tell a story. And this is just so much what I want of all of these other shows that are coming out. Like, you know, I'm really interested to see what they do with Loki, because we've seen a lot of Loki, and we've had a lot of time to build him. What more can they do with him in you know, 6 or 7 episodes or whatever? And I think that's really, really exciting. And I think that, you know, even if the show finishes next week where it's a bit of a bang and there's less sort of, you know, intimate moments, and it is all just like colorful stuff flying around the screen, I'm here for it. I'm totally cool, because I felt like this episode gave me enough of that justification as to why this season even existed. I talked a lot there, but I like this show a lot.
You know, I agree with many things that you said. I think this is the much needed episode. It gave a lot of gravitas to the stuff that was happening. It's very emotional. And if you peel away the kind of, you know, showy off, cooly stuff, it is still a grief, person grieving and kind of coming to terms with that grieving. And that's quite powerful when you look at, you know, this property, this content, this film, this TV show. Yeah. This is WandaVision, and I hope they stick the landing. As much as I was not,
I really, really do.
I think this series went up and down, kind of, you know, mostly down for me, and then start redeeming itself. I hope they stick the landing, and that's going to be incredible. So this is a WandaVision on Disney Plus. We gave it 1 star. No, we didn't give any stars. We're waiting for this to finish, and then we're probably going to have a maybe larger discussion about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that's about. It's probably just a case of the Mondays. Am I right?
One other thing to discuss is obviously WandaVision season finale. The title of that episode 9, is season finale. Is that correct?
Series finale?
Series finale? Yeah. Sounds similar. Almost exactly the same. So, series finale is... okay, the end of the WandaVision. And Conor cried when this finished. He texted me for 2 days saying, I can't get over it. It was the best thing I've ever experienced. I've watched it 7 times. So why don't you tell me about WandaVision series finale?
You sound like
Conor.
you're prepping yourself. You're like, oh, here we go.
No, absolutely. There is nothing, you don't expect me to say. But why don't you tell me a little bit about these? Because we were talking about, during the last episode, we were worried whether it's going to stick the landing, because the build-up was really great. And I have to agree with you. We discussed that episode 8 was quite a good build-up. It was very emotional, had really strong performances in there, and explained pretty much everything. So nothing was kind of left out. And whatever was left for the series to do is just to bring it home. Did it bring it home, Conor?
Mostly, yes. Mostly.
Okay.
I think that, I think last time we said that there's a lot of like threads that they have to try and tie. There's a lot of stories kind of pile driving towards the end that they need to sort of wrap up in a satisfying way.
So we had to kind of make sure that the kids are safe, because at the very end we had kids in the hands of Agatha Agatha Harkness, or is it the other way around? Right. Agnes or Agatha Harkness. We learned that there is maybe we should talk about that. We're gonna be talking about spoilers here.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, we go all spoilers in with
spoilers. Okay.
If you haven't,
you have 3 seconds to go into show notes and just go to the next part of the program if you don't want to hear about this. So we have learned that Vision has a twin brother. Ooh, that's gonna be bring into the mix. We have what else? We have Monica Rambeau. We didn't know what actually happened to Monica Rambeau, so she wasn't in the 8th episode at all. So that was a thing to tie in. And we were probably looking to see like a big fight, big battle. And so what do you think about all those? Did I miss something?
Yeah, well, we had Kat Dennings, Darcy.
Darcy, yeah.
And we had Jimmy Woo and Hayward, right?
Yeah.
So we had a lot of stuff, like a lot of plates spinning that they had to figure out how to get off the spinning tops. And some of them, I feel like they didn't really do a super job of it when it came to it. So,
for example,
primarily Jimmy Woo, Hayward, and Darcy were.
Yeah, I think they were just very, very kind of like sidelined in this episode. I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a suspicion based on how Darcy ends. So we see Darcy for not only the briefest second in the episode where she smashes her car into the side of Hayward. And you never actually see them both on the screen at the same time. You get a shot of him, and then the camera pans to her, and she's inside the car, and she says, "Have fun in jail." I think that's her only line. And then later on,
she's not even there during the ending, right? Like she's not even there.
Exactly. So later on,
she's left to do something else. So it's just like, whoo. Okay.
Jimmy says, "Where's Darcy?" Monica replies something to the effect of, "She hates debriefs." And that's it. We just never see her again. So
Did she say something controversial, and they just got rid of her before that?
No.
Okay.
So what I think has maybe happened here is that a lot of this was filmed pre-COVID, pre-pandemic, a lot of her sequences, and then COVID happened and it forced them to have to go back and readjust and tweak a few things, and they weren't able to get her back for whatever scenes that she maybe needed to shoot to wrap up their original script for her, so that they just essentially wrote her out of it with a very brief scene. I wouldn't be surprised if if there was some someone was able to identify that her crashing into Hayward was totally digital effects, and that she was that scene was totally effective, and you just get her to record a line and send it over. It's very easy to do, can be done from home, and they just recorded in. As a matter of fact, at the end of this episode, there is when Monica and Wanda are talking, and Monica says, you know, it's kind of like, where are you gonna go? Or it's just, and she says, I don't really understand what this power is. And then she says, but I will. And then she says another line. I seen something that if you look close enough, the "but I will" line is digital effects. That sequence is cut, and then they comp in a digital Wanda, and it's just so convincing. And they had her re-record her line, and she added another part in, and she very quickly they just like motion it back into the other line, so you never see it. It's totally smooth.
I've not noticed that. Yeah.
If you have to really be looking for it, you can tell that there is.
How many times you've seen this?
No,
50
I seen it pointed out somewhere else. I didn't pick it up on my own.
Say you've seen it.
So I wouldn't be surprised anyway, to get back to it, that Darcy was in fact just that. Her finishing sequence was that when they had her and they filmed her with Vision in the truck that time, and they wrapped that day, they were never able to get her back to do any more. So they rechanged the script. They have Vision fly out of the truck and they leave her behind, and then they just digitally comp an ending in for her and they write her out of the script, because ultimately she never had much to do throughout the series anyway, right? She kind of served her purpose very early on. So I have a funny feeling that some of the ending of this series was rewrites that had to happen to accommodate. And I feel that is the case with Hayward and Jimmy Woo as well, that their endings are just so pointless. And it was some of the weakest stuff throughout the series. We talked about that before, that what was kind of happening outside the Hex very often was way less interesting, and it got less interesting as time went on. You know, we were kind of building who is this sort of secret person that Monica's talking to, and then we get who it is, and we're like, right? Okay, and then it never really amounts to anything. I think it would have been much stronger had Monica, Darcy, and Jimmy made it to episode 6 and they were just gone. You know, I don't even feel like we needed to see Monica become Photon, because she doesn't do anything as Photon or Spectrum or whatever she is. You know,
that was a kind of a way to introduce a new superhero, to tie her into the universe, and to do it not in the movie but just somewhere else, so people, if they see it in the movie, they go back and watch that TV show. But I feel like just gonna kind of pause you for a second. Sure. I kind of like that you saying things that I'm thinking, and this is coming from a big fan. So, you know, like we're on the same page. I think those three kind of timelines, I completely even forgot about them. For me, more important stuff is happening in the Hex than outside the Hex.
Yeah, right. So I may be a super fan, Rado, but I'm not above criticizing things. Okay.
I know you love criticizing things, so that's a different story, you know.
So yeah, I would have preferred had they, as much as I enjoyed watching them, I really enjoyed Jimmy Woo. I love Monica. I think I forget that actress' name, but she's doing a fantastic job, and I can't wait to see her in more stuff. And Kat Dennings is Kat Dennings. Like she's Darcy before. She's the same Darcy now, and it's like, whatever, cool. And I thought the show provided a fun way to bring her and Jimmy Woo back in without needing to have like a full spin-off series or something silly like that. It's like, no, they can come in and they can have a role to play in here. But I felt like at some point they should have been like, all right, the line is drawn. What are we doing with these characters now? Let's just move them on to halfway through the season. We can pick up with them somewhere else. They can come back in Loki. I mean, Darcy and Loki have some connection before from the Thor movies, right? So it makes sense if she had some part to play there in one episode. Who knows? My other big complaint was that I would have really liked the show to have avoided this sort of big spectacle in the air fight that happens about midway through the episode.
Which one? Because there are two fights. There are two big fights, right?
Yeah, I think both. I mean, I think what happens between Wanda and Agatha is perfectly fine. I love the little throwback to the Wizard of Oz with the boots as she smashed the car through the window. Yeah, like that little stuff I think is where this show is working, is where it was like at its strongest, is when it can have these little moments like that. And they don't have too big of like an explosive fight at that sequence, and I feel like the sequence that they have later on in the sky is where it starts to pick up again, actually. But the two visions, particularly as they fight, is so meaningless because we've just got introduced to this vision, and we know that the other vision is en route because we've seen him leave in the last episode, so you kind of know it's going to happen, and we already know Vision's powers. We already know what he can do from the movies that he's been in. So did I need to see two visions fight in the sky and shoot the laser beams out of their heads at each other and do the phasing and throwing them into caravans and stuff like that? No, I don't think that I did. I don't think that it was very useful to any of the plot, and I think it used up more time than was necessary, because ultimately what was fantastic was the sequence of them in the library where they communicate with each other. And Vision is like, well, how can I beat myself? It's like, well, like, I can talk to him as an intelligent android because that's what I am and that's what he is. So it makes perfect sense if we just have a talk. Like, it's, you know, it's kind of like, how would you go about fighting your own self? You kind of got to know like your strengths and weaknesses and like
kicking the nuts, you know, that's what I get.
And yeah, and they have this fight and it's like, well, it's kind of pointless because like they're equally matched across the board. So the way that he ends up dealing with it is so much more interesting. And I would have much preferred if they just had a longer conversation between the two of them, where instead of them like fighting in the sky, they just had a much more philosophical debate about their existence and about who they are and what it means to them, and you know, like what their previous life was or what it could be and so on and so forth. Like, that would have been far more interesting. And the way they do it with the Ship of Theseus was really, really great. And them fighting in the sky was not. It was just sort of like, yep, it's Vision, he's fighting in the sky. The budget of the show does not hold up to the budget of the big movies. It kind of looks fine, but you can see the edges showing a little bit here, where it's like, yeah, we could have done with like another pass over this here at the, you know, the animation studio to get this looking really, really good, but we don't have time, we don't have budget. So I would have liked to have seen a little less of that in the middle of the episode, because I felt like it used up precious time where we explore the characters further.
Yeah, I think just to add something to here, I understand why the fight scenes are there. I think this is what, like, just to give fans this and give fans that, so fans want to see, you know, wavy hands and, you know, making this, making that, and it's just like, okay, fantastic, great, but it's just like, I agree with you again, Connor. No, this was like smashy bangy Marvel stuff that, you know, I can live without. I can definitely watch it, you know, in different TV show, or like that one that's coming, or in the film. But here, you know, we had such a good episode with emotional stuff, and this, it's just like another person saying, enough with the emotional stuff, let's do some smashy bangy stuff. And then when midway through the episode, towards the end, you know, Wanda needs to make a big decision to whether she's gonna quit that world or not, and just kind of it doesn't land anymore, because you are obviously just thinking about like, whoa, there was a big fight in the sky and whatever. She's like, now she's doing something to her family, and it's like, okay, doesn't have that arc that it was earned in episode 8 until the episode 8. But I don't know. That's how I kind of felt it.
Yeah, this definitely, that sequence feels like where you get the committee that makes decisions, that come in and say like, yeah, we screen tested this and we think that audiences would really like if there was like a cool fight scene that happened here between the two visions, you know. And it's like, you know, like it's like made by committee, you know, instead of you know, I think that's a harder thing for you to fight when it comes to making a big Avengers movie. I can imagine how much debate probably happened to get Infinity War to end in the way that Infinity War does. Like, you can imagine that probably wasn't an easy fight. That probably wasn't just like one of the screenwriters was like, this is what we want to do, and they all went, sounds good, we love it, sounds great. I would imagine that was you want to kill half of the superheroes and half of the universe in a Disney Marvel movie? Like, one of our biggest things, let's talk about this further, right? And it's probably a hard-fought battle that they ended up winning. And I feel like this is the sort of situation where this shouldn't have had to be a battle because of the nature of this show. This should have been the moment where the show has so far been so creative in so many ways that it felt like they could have said, we don't need this. Like, this isn't why you said fans want this. I don't believe that we do. Because I feel like most people are like, oh, it didn't stick the landing. And I'm like, yeah, and this is one of the reasons why, because we built, over a course of a few episodes and a few parts in movies before, we built an understanding of who Wanda and Vision were. We've now got a really great sense, thanks to episode 8, of who Wanda is and why she's doing what she's doing. And we want to see that explored. We want to see that pan out. And I think we did get there. It's just that they took this detour through the middle of it to do this other part that is probably serving up something else in the MCU, because of course we see White Vision leaving. We never see what happens to him. So he's coming back. What happens
to him, exactly.
He's coming back. Same with Agatha. Agatha doesn't die, so she's coming back some point in time. All for it, by the way. Catherine Hahn, incredible. So all for, I'm glad they didn't kill Agatha, actually, because I'm like, I want to see more of her in this universe at some point. So anyway, all of it kind of accumulates towards the end, where we end up having another fight in the sky. And this one is a little bit more clever because we see Wanda go through a series of emotions. Right before it, we see her go to give up the world that she's created. And then she sees her children and Vision being destroyed in front of her, and the selfishness sets back in, and she says, no, like, I'm not going to do that. I want to, like, these are my family. I want to keep them. And you really buy into her turmoil. And then we get into the sky, and it feels like she comes over that hurdle and she says, I know what must be done. So, you see her going into the sky, and Agatha has kind of promised her, well, look, I can let you keep what you want. And you're kind of in that moment where you're like, right, so Wanda seemingly, I don't trust it, but it seems like maybe she's saying that she wants to stay in this world and that this is her family and this is what she's willing to do, give up her powers. But you're not quite buying it. And then we see what she does, and she pulls one over on Agatha. It's really clever, a nice throwback to the previous episode. And then we get that sequence rolling out after she kind of beats Agatha. We get the badass costume coming in. Shout out to that costume. Really cool.
Very cool. Very nice.
Very cool. And then we get the sequence as it finishes where she has come to terms with, I have to give up my family. I can't keep doing what I'm doing. It's not the right thing, at least in this case, for me to do, because they're not quote unquote real, despite how real they may feel to her. Like, they're not real. And that final sequence is incredibly emotional, I thought, anyway. I don't know about you, but
it didn't work for me because of all that stuff that was happening around it. I think it was kind of they tried to pull it back from the previous episode, but it didn't work for me that much. I think it was just lost in the noise for me.
I agree.
It doesn't mean that it was not a bad scene. It was a good scene, but an overall picture of that episode, it didn't work.
I agree. I do think that the path that they took to getting there was a little bit more distracting because of like the fights in the air and stuff like that we didn't need to see. Because then, like, not only do we have the fights in the air, but then we get Photon using her powers very briefly. We get Hayward trying to murder children very briefly. We get Darcy crashing into him, and it's like, well, I don't care what Darcy's doing. I don't care. Hayward has proved to be a pointless villain. Photon isn't really doing anything cool, really. She's just having this one short sequence where she sort of stops these bullets or whatever. We haven't yet really defined what her powers are either. We had the sort of the wrap up of Quicksilver as well.
Yeah, that was interesting. I wanted to kind of ask you about that because it turns out that Evan Peters is not playing Pietro from the MCU or from the Fox universe. He's just playing a guy who is an actor or something, and he's just kind of like, that was so strange for me. Like they kind of took an actor that is from a film that everyone knows that he plays that role, but he's there like by an accident, and he looks, I don't know. It was just like fun with, let's have fun with fans about this, and that's it. No, I don't buy it. I don't know. I don't know what's happening.
It feels like a moment where the joke gets too meta, that even the people who would have been in on the joke are no longer getting the joke, because we're like, is this a joke or is it not a joke? Or, you know, like, yeah, because it's Evan Peters and it's from the Fox universe. It's like, oh, he's playing Quicksilver. Is it that Quicksilver? Is it another Quicksilver? Is it someone's cast as Quicksilver? Is he playing a trick on her as Quicksilver? It's like, it's none of these things at all. They just put him there as a wink to the fans who know that he played the same character in another version, but it's not him this time. And it's just like, it was they went maybe a little bit too far, and you know, like they kind of set something up just to like tease people, but it turned out that it wasn't even a tease either.
That was a trolling. That was proper trolling, right?
It was a troll, yeah. So I don't know if that necessarily paid off. Is it done? Is it finished? Or are we going to see more of that? Perhaps. I feel like they are not afraid to go back and retcon some things back into how they do things at this point. They're not afraid to take a step back and say, well, we did this and it didn't really work out, or maybe it didn't get explained enough, and maybe we can dial it in a little bit more. Wanda is a prime example of this with the Stark bomb. You know, it was like, they essentially retconned it to say that, well, no, it wasn't just by luck that the bomb didn't go off. It would appear that Wanda had some sort of ability to stop that bomb prior to it going off, like a probability hex, as Agatha said. Anyway,
if we're talking about retconning, just wanted to ask you something as well, because you know, one of the biggest kind of things you can have in a universe is like when you have your character that you admire, you love, it's being killed off. You know, again, spoilers for another movies, but we know that at least 2 big characters from the universe have been killed off in Endgame. 3 when you count Vision, and then suddenly you have Vision back. Obviously, at the beginning of the show when we started watching it, my thoughts were like, okay, is this happening before the Endgame or is it after? But it's some sort of a simulation. That's why we had all those theories and everything, kind of like, just like, what's going on. Now we knew that like Vision came out of Wanda. It was her version of him. So that's why he didn't remember some of those things. He didn't have all the knowledge. But then there is White Vision that has all the information, because the Wanda's vision has unlocked it for him. So he technically is Vision. So essentially, we cared about him dying, and Wanda cared about him dying, and now he's not dead. I know technically he's white, but he can change his color anytime. He's made from like the material. He can do that, I assume. And isn't that harmful to the whole story, the whole kind of narrative arc? When I'm pretty sure we're gonna have not Tony Stark, but we're gonna have Iron Man coming back as a different actor who will play like the legacy of Iron Man. This is gonna happen 100%.
Let me ask you this then: did you feel the same way, or do you feel the same way about Gamora from Infinity War to Endgame?
I mean, again, Gamora is not that big of a character when you compare it to
Vision.
No,
Gamora had basically had 2 of her own movies at this point. Like,
not her own movies, so there was no movie. I mean, maybe if you put it on the scale, they would kind of, measure almost equally. For me, Vision was a bigger character. He was there from a very, like, as Paul Bettany playing Jarvis. He was there from a very beginning of the MCU. And, you know, you asked me, like, what my girlfriend thinks about it, and then I messaged you. My girlfriend started rewatching MCU movies because when we finished watching WandaVision, she was like, I don't see all the connections. I see it like this is another interesting discussion. Like, she does not kind of remember that character from Thor. She's just watching Thor and it's like, oh, she's in Thor, you know, like so this is kind of important when you have this whole history of people. So I don't know if it's harmful. You're going to bring everyone back now? You're going to just kill them off and bring everyone back? This is a big soap opera. I said that before. And I just have... Those movies, those stories are not brave enough for me to care. Like, if Wolverine is going to be back, this is going to be the end.
So someone asked James Gunn about, you know, oh, you're going to find a way to bring Yondu back into it. And he's like, no, like, death has to mean something. It has to mean something, otherwise what's the point in any of this? And I do worry about that going forward with the MCU. It's like, how often are we going to figure out a way to bring someone back and all of a sudden they're just back? Gamora is an example of it. But what they've done with Gamora, and I think what they're going to do with Vision, and I believe in both of these actors enough in that they are the same character coming back, but they are not the same person. They are like the same person coming back, but they're not the same character.
Oh, it's a little bit like Superman coming back in Justice League, right? So it's the same character, but it's not like he's changed and whatever. Like, fuck you.
And I just believe that the Justice League script is not good enough, and neither is Thingy at actually portraying it. But you know, like, I could see in Thor: Love and Thunder or Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, like, we find Gamora again, but this Gamora does not fall in love with Quill. She's not just the same Gamora again. She's not just in love with Quill again the same way. Maybe that the story is him trying to get her to fall in love, and it just doesn't work. Because this Gamora is not the same Gamora. She's now missing all of the point of her life that led her to falling in love with Quill. She never gets to experience that because she's been kind of pulled out of her own timeline. And the same with this Vision. This Vision he is being told all of this stuff by the Wanda's Vision, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to feel the same about her. It doesn't necessarily mean that he's like, oh, I get it. I was in love with Wanda, so I should be in love with her again. And I think Paul Bettany, in this show, he is absolutely incredible in so many sequences. And I really, really look forward to seeing him now coming back as a different version of Vision and having to deal with being having less humanity maybe than he did before. Because one of the things that made Vision so endearing was how much humanity he has. And it's highlighted in that closing sequence of him, like, you know, shedding a tear. As he say, you know, and he says, like, you know, I have to know, like, what am I? Like, he's still, even though he's born of Wanda this time, he has this characteristic of total humanity within him. And it makes him such a lovable character because he's so incredibly powerful, and yet he doesn't almost ever want to use any of that power. He almost wants to keep it shielded in a way all the time because it's the humanity that he's so interested in. So I'd love to see now, how do we get Paul Bettany to come back and play this character devoid of that? Do we ever get to see him grow back into that? Or does he always struggle with it? Is it just now never a part of him because he never knew love the way that he did with Wanda? So I think there's a lot of opportunity for stuff like that here. I understand what you're saying. Death has to mean something, and I'm scared as well that they do just start bringing back people because it's like, well, you know, we can find a way to use multiple universes and multiple timelines to just bring people back, and they're here. Like, do we bring back Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow? You know, why not? We can figure out, oh, she was trapped in the Soul Stone, and you can actually bring them back. Like, there's all sorts of silly plot lines they can come up with. I don't think that they're going to go that way. I think Kevin Feige ultimately feels the same in that, these decisions have to mean something that they're making. And the characters have to show growth. And I think that the MCU in particular has moved from strength to strength in its recent years at showing character growth. The big jump here is when you go from Thor 1 and Thor 2 to then Ragnarok, and then you see him in Infinity War, because we rewatched Infinity War recently, and you have that sequence where he's talking to Rocket on the ship. And it's so like Chris Hemsworth is delivering such a good performance, and he's like, Thanos is just another in a long line of bastards, he will feel my wrath. And it's like Rocket's saying to him, he's like, you got like a dad, he's like killed family, it's like, oh, sister tried to kill me or destroy my hammer, brother died, mom died, best friend dead. And like he's so like, he just lists off all of these things that we've seen over all of these movies that have broken him down and rebuilt him as a better character that we care more about, and that still continues then into Endgame. And how does that move then into Love and Thunder? So I do think that ultimately, this has been such a long tangent, but ultimately I think that's
what's the point, Connor? What is the point?
The point is that I still think the MCU are doing a really good job here at driving with their characters as opposed to the stuff that's surrounding them. And I mentioned to you earlier on that I was initially I was kind of like, yeah, Falcon Winter Soldier looks really cool. And as I've started to see a few more of the little like 1 minute teasers that they've been putting out on the lead up to it launching this week, I have got more and more excited, because it looks like we're actually getting to see a lot more depth of Bucky and Sam. It's about them. It's about their partnership and their friendship.
Really, I thought it's going to be something else, but hey.
No, but I thought there's a potential that this series turns out to be, they just go do silly things. And most of it is just them doing like fun, and it's class, and look at all the cool fight scenes, and they're making jokes, and it's it's cool. They don't like each other, but they're friends. But the stuff we've actually been seeing is like showing a lot more depth to it already, and I'm like, okay, this could be really cool, and I'm very, very excited to see where this goes now. So I think ultimately, trending forward, that what I'm saying is, to loop it all back around, Rado, is that we're finally
back to the interview.
We're going to get diversity at the Oscars superhero movie for Best Picture. It's gonna happen. Don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Don't know what it is. But we're getting closer to them. They deserve the reckoning. They need to stop putting them in. It should have been The Dark Knight, but we need to stop putting them in all the technical categories. All right, we need to stop. Oh, best cinematographer, cool. Yeah. Best production, best sound design, cool. All of that, fantastic. We need to put it in there in Best Picture. It needs to happen.
Once they deserve it, and it's definitely going to be Justice League. Zack Snyder's Justice League. I wanted to ask you actually. So overall, what do you think about WandaVision? But I'm afraid you're going to be rambling about 10 minutes again, and I'll switch off. So in 2 sentences, what was your expectation? What did you get? And if you had to rate it, what would you give it?
I would say it met my expectation exactly. I mentioned this on one of our previous episodes. I wanted a series where we were being given mysteries and twists and turns and like little hints and clues here, and led down an alley one way, it turns out it's a dead end, and like I wanted stuff like that. I wanted to be going and reading like theories and stuff like that, and I think that they delivered that so well. They had a lot of fun with it and a lot of creativity with it. Out of 10, I would probably give it a solid 8.
Okay, so almost like 4 stars, right? So 4 stars, so just to answer my own question,
yes.
In terms of this TV show, I did not have that high of expectations. Actually, I was kind of afraid this is going to be one of those rubbish Marvel shows, or like one of the weakest kind of things. But then the beginning was so strong for me. I was sold from the moment it started. I really enjoyed probably half of this. half of that show kind of dipped down for me for many reasons we already said. So I really like the building towards the end, but the ending wasn't there. Overall, I think it's a very, very good attempt on like something different in this universe.
Yeah.
And I think mainly for that, I would also give it 4 stars.
Yeah,
for the attempt to do something, bring something else, despite this kind of being smashy grubby, whatever the films can be from the universe. This tried to be a little bit different. This is WandaVision, available on Disney Plus in its entirety, 9 episodes.
Yeah.
And towards the end, like last 4 episodes, if you've not watched them, or there are scenes at the very fucking end of this credits. Last episode has a scene at the very, very fucking end.
Yeah.
Which was like super annoying because I had to listen to one podcast to tell me about it.
Yeah.
But just to add to this, very quickly, Assembled. So we have Marvel Studios Assembled on Disney Plus that is like released a week after the WandaVision finished, and this is the documentary making of WandaVision. I watched it and I was just like, okay, interesting stuff. I like to see behind the scenes, especially when they were shooting the very first episodes, and see how the production was kind of rolling through. But a lot of it was just like, hey, we're gonna explain you what actually happened in there, just in case you didn't kind of get it.
Yep.
And this was like, this is a mixture of like interesting documentary with like some stuff explaining people what this show was about. So not entirely essential viewing, like the gallery, like the Mandalorian gallery was like essential viewing. This is not really essential viewing. I think the beginning, when they show the studio, how the setup was, how they kind of tried to make up like what color a vision should be to look good in black and white, that was super great. But a lot of the dialogue, the interviews were just like, my God, pointless.
Yeah,
what did you think?
It was a lot of like, the interviews were a lot of surface level stuff. Like, I'm super happy to be in this role.
Yeah, but it was like also explaining, so we see that Wanda is actually doesn't know what she's doing. Is she there or not? Like, okay, I've seen the show. You don't have to explain this to me. So that was like kind of unnecessary.
That's fair. I think.
So Marvel Studios Assembled and WandaVision, everything available on Disney Plus. So can we close this discussion for now?
I think we will finally put an end to what has felt like a lifetime of us talking. We could do like we could split the parts where we talk about WandaVision off and put it out as a single.
That's what I'm gonna do. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. That's gonna be like 5 hours, probably.
And like that, he's gone.